Hey, Book Dragons! It is your girl Lindsay with another episode of the Spine Bookcast Chronicles of Bookshop. Today I have one of my favorite people, David Martin. He is an incredibly talented author, and he has some news to share with us today. Since we've already had you on the show, we're not going to rehash the how did you get into reading conversation because we've already had that. So,
Oh, good.
let's talk about your what news do you have to share with us today?
Well, okay. So, my first book, I published it last year, and that was a fun experience. And I decided that I wanted that pain again. And so, I've got a new book coming out. It's actually coming out next month. I don't have the exact day for it, but we're talking mid-May. But it's a fantasy book. My first book was sci-fi. This one's a fantasy book. And so far on social media, I've revealed the title, so I can share it here,
Okay.
which is how to assassinate a wizard.
Okay. I'm already
Uh,
intrigued. I'm already there.
and despite the title, it's less of a how-to book and more of a our main character is a wizard. His name is Kedrick, and a lot of
Great name, by the
people
way.
want to. Oh, thank you. A lot of people want to try their hand at assassinating a wizard. And so
Okay.
we see through the course of the book, we see a lot of how-tos and some of them more successful than others. But yeah, so our main character, Kedrick, he's a wizard from a place called the Collegia Magica, which is just a fancy word for magic school.
Okay.
Um, but he made a mistake when he was a student there, and he got not necessarily kicked out of school, but after he graduated, he got exiled.
So he
And Yeah, yeah. So he's not the most popular person there at the Collegia.
Okay.
But the book will pick up with him serving as the court wizard for a king that he has to do something for, and then he's called back home, which is confusing because they don't like him at home. So he has certain things pulling him back home. Uh, as far as the general feel of the book, it's a little bit it's half mystery, half high fantasy adventure. There's a lot of magic, a lot of fantastical things going on. You can imagine what goes on around a magic school. Uh, I know plenty of us have read books like that. So
So your first book is science fiction. What made
right.
you want to change over from science fiction to fantasy?
Uh, I don't really see it as a changeover necessarily.
Okay.
But there are some differences. Science fiction is for in my opinion exploring a lot of the unknown.
Sure.
Uh it's and and the the way my brain goes at it is science fiction explores the unknown, whereas fantasy uncovers what's been forgotten. um
Great way to say that.
yeah, it's just kind of the way it works in my head.
That's
So like
fantastic.
I said, my fantasy book is, it's a bit mysterious. It's got some mystery to it. And so that's the way I kind of approach the two differences, even though in my opinion, uh they have a lot more similarities than people think they do.
Like what?
Uh
Like
but uh
what?
but yeah. Well, so with science fiction and fantasy both, you're even in hard sci-fi, I'll go ahead and say that. You're you have to say, okay, something that is not normal to my everyday life is about to happen.
Okay.
Um and it kind of takes you going into the same place in your brain, in my opinion. Uh Plenty of settings have magic in space, plenty of settings have science and fantasy. Uh what separates the two in my mind most specifically is technology, because science doesn't always mean technology. Those can be two different things. Uh, but so to transition from having written science fiction and now writing a fantasy, having written a fantasy story, to me it has to do with really your scope of focus because and I'll illustrate it. You know, we've got this little core of focus in a fantasy book that is your geography. You're on horseback. You sometimes get magical portals to send you places, but
Sure, sure.
you can concentrate on a very small geographical area in fantasy. Whereas with science fiction, while it's possible to tell a story in a pocket,
Mhm.
uh, you still want to go out and explore a galaxy. Like there's a whole universe out there.
Sure.
So science fiction expands your geography to planets and systems and galaxies. But
Okay.
in my opinion, you're still telling the story the same way. If it's not a character, if it's not a character who's experiencing the world to some degree in the same way you are, then it loses a little bit of its impact. Back to the simple story of Luke Skywalker.
Right.
He exists in this huge galaxy, but all he's ever known is that small farm on Tatooine.
Sure. Okay.
And and so you can kind of tell both stories from that from that. He's on Tatooine and he's got the old hermit wizard living off in the desert. He's
Sure.
got the Tusken Raiders living out in the sand to deal with. He's got his uncle who he never gets along with. Um, and that's your small fantasy story.
Hmm.
But then all of a sudden, C3PO and R2D2 show up, and boom, he's exploring the galaxy. Uh, that's kind of the differentiating point for me is as soon as we expand that geography, okay, well then we've got a different thing. So I hope that makes at least a little bit of sense.
No, no, no. I see what you're saying. What do you think? So, especially I think for a lot of people, fantasy has made a really big resurgence right now, right?
Yeah.
And science fiction has always had its audience, and so is fantasy to a certain point. But what do you think our obsession? Because I'm that's what I'm going to say because I'm obsessed. But what do you think mankind's obsession is with sci-fi and fantasy? Because it is one of the biggest genres that's out right now and has always been there. What do you think readers' obsession with that genre, those two genres are?
Uh, I, you know, I don't know about everybody. I hope
In
that I
general.
hope that I know. What I was getting to is I hope that most people share my general feeling about there's just this unknown quality to the world we're all looking for. Um, and however we try to look for it, we look for others who are looking for the same thing. Looking for a mystical connection. We might look at fantasy books to feel more connected to the natural world or to magic or to the past.
Sure.
Uh, that can ground us a lot. If we feel like we're up in the air, floating around, and not really grounded, I feel like fantasy has a tendency to ground us because it it tends to, as a genre, talk about uh, more relatable things as far as imagine what it might have been like, you know, living in the past, just magical.
Yeah.
For science fiction, for science fiction, and I kind of made this distinction already, but it's kind of the hope of the future. You've you're talking about how science in the 20th century in particular just became the thing
Yeah.
for books, for television, Star Trek, Star Wars,
Oh yeah.
Asimov,
Time.
launching all that up, and that's the thing is its rise and fall, and not really fall, but as far as falling off from what I consider its height was science fiction, again, really had a lot to do with basically with NASA and space exploration. The farther we go out into space, the more interested we get in the stars. Um, and so every time we push a little farther out and a little farther out, we keep asking, okay, what else is out there? Gene Roddenberry was great about that with Star Trek. He goes, okay, we've made it to the moon. Now where do we go? And you talk about science fiction. It's one of those. It's one of the strange genres that science fiction can become science fact.
Well, and I mean,
Captain
to your
Kirk's
point,
communicator.
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, to your point.
Oh no, 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 you're fine.
To your point, when you say that science fiction has become fact, you're not wrong because you think like the little Star Trek, the beep beep. What are the
Yeah, the little communicators. Yeah,
he goes,
yeah,
please don't come for me. The communicator.
yeah.
Now we have cell phones, and then
Right.
just all the different things, and of course my brain has forgotten every single sci-fi thing ever to come out that we now have
Right.
technology wise. But I think about all the things that we have seen in movies and on TV, and now you look at our lives and we're like, you know. But then that also brings up to
Yeah.
me the whole Battlestar Galactica thing with there's going to be spoilers, so if you haven't seen the episode series, so like the whole of humanity lost its planet because AI and robots and stuff took over, and then they determined that humanity wasn't worth saving, so they tried to blow us all up, and so you spend this entire TV series trying to find a new home, and then they do, and what happens? A millennia later, we're back right where we started with AI taking. Did we learn nothing?
Yeah, that's the thing is science fiction gives us a chance to they say history repeats itself and you have to learn from history. Science fiction gives us a chance to fast forward that that process and talk about how future humans are making our mistakes.
Yep.
And it throws our mistakes into relief. There are several simple science fiction books that do this. Not to touch on a whole other can of worms, but the one of the ones that I pull out very simply is Fahrenheit 451.
Oh my God, it's such a good book.
Um, well, yeah, and the thing is, being as nondescript as it is about the future, but also pointing to our problems, it's just one of those. Okay, is humanity going to keep repeating this mistake over and over and over again, or are we eventually going to learn? I think Bradbury was pretty clear about he thinks we're going to keep repeating it
Yeah.
over and over again.
Well, I mean, we are. Look at
It's
our
all yeah,
political climate right now. Look what's happening. I was joking that there's
yeah.
the lady in Fahrenheit 451 that sets herself on fire on the pile of books. Like, I did not realize that I had a bizarre goal, but like that's where we're coming. I will let me just burn because it's crazy to me.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, it's nuts.
But yeah, and so that's what I think something, as to sum up the whole thing to the last question you actually asked, which was I don't know how
Sorry.
long ago. No. While fantasy tends to ground us and tends to make us think about things that were, science fiction gives us uh that whole like, oh my goodness, we're doing this again. We're uh not so much in an alarmist, though we should probably have some more alarm about certain things. Uh it it gives us another chance to not make the mistake again, and
Yeah.
and we need to maybe pay attention to that more. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, no, we have the opportunity to not make the mistake again, and then look what happened, you know? So,
Well,
yeah. And I think about, yeah. Every time, like, I remember when we watched, what's the one that takes place? God, Guy Fawkes Day. What is that movie with the guy with the mask?
v, yeah, V for Vendetta. Yeah.
That movie messed me up so bad because I remember just feeling so like, oh my God, that's terrible. I would never want that to happen. This is horrible. Oh my God. And then look where we are. And I still cannot rewatch that movie because it's just, oh my God. And then you read stuff like Mouse, which is our banned book club for next month. And there's so much
Hmm.
information to show us what we're doing wrong, how could we do better, and yet we still repeat the same stupid crap every single time. So I agree with you on that science fiction thing, is that it shows us, hey, if you keep going along this path, this is what's going to happen. And we're just all like, nah, la, 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 it's fine.
Yeah, well, and it's one of those things that, humanity is to think that it's smarter than the people that came before it.
Yeah,
Uh, and science fiction, I think, gives us a unique ability to show us that no, we're not.
no,
Because if we imagine future people, no, they're not any smarter than us. They're not any better than us.
nope.
Uh,
Like the whole back to
so
back.
yeah, it.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I think there's a delay. I'm sorry.
No, 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 you're fine.
The whole thing with in Battlestar Galactica, the doctor, whatever his name is, and he falls for the Cylon, and the Cylon ends up, like, dude, like all you had to do was make a phone call,
Right.
and instead you're too busy making out with a Cylon. Like, are you kidding me right now? I just, humanity.
Yeah, well, but it also, and so to turn it on its head, it also gives us a hope.
Hmm.
It also gives us a chance to say, hey, I've already said it. I've already said his name, Gene Roddenberry. No one was more hopeful about science fiction than he was, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, let's pay attention to our mistakes, but let's not lose sight of the fact that we could get better. We could.
Yeah,
It's our choice.
there's a scene in the show Newsweek with Jeff Daniels. Have you seen that show?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh my God. I literally watched this entire show, um, the opening scene, the monologue that he has, because it is legitimately one of the best, um, it's one of the best, I think, most accurate things. So, like, he's sitting to set the scene if anybody hasn't seen it. Jeff Daniels plays a reporter, right? And I will get to my point. Bear with me, I promise.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah.
um, they're getting into they're doing all this stuff, and he's talking, and somebody says, I gotta find it. Hang on. Um, oh gosh, what is it? They're talking about whether America is still a great country, okay? And so Will is trying to avoid the question and popping off with like BS crap answers because he doesn't want to get into it, right? So
Hmm.
finally, somebody says, why is America one of the greatest countries in the world? And Will, who's played by Jeff Daniels, goes, it's not the greatest country in the world, Professor. That's my answer. And the professor's like, what do you mean? And he said, you're saying, and Will says, yes, let's talk about it. And so Will just becomes unhinged. Fine, Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of our paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost you money, it costs votes. It costs airtime and column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always? And then somebody tries to interrupt and he says, and with a straight face, you're going to tell the students that America is so star spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom. Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom. And so somebody else goes to say something, says, yeah, and you, sorority girl, just in case you wander into a voting booth one day, here's some things you should know. And one of them is there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we are the greatest country in the world. We're seventh in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in the life expectancy, 178th in the infant mortality, third in median household income, Number four in labor force, and number four in exports. We lead the world in only three categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are without a doubt a member of the worst period, generation period ever, period. So when you ask me what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite? And so the whole room is sitting here really quiet. And this is the part that I love the most. This right here is why I watched the show. He's paused and he's kind of just sitting there thinking about it for a second. You can see like the weight of what he's just said, because he basically just blew up his career because all of this is being filmed.
Hmm.
He says, we sure used to be. We stood up for what was right. We fought for moral reasons. We passed laws, struck down laws for moral reasons. We waged wars on poverty, not poor people. We sacrificed. We cared about our neighbors. We put our money where our mouths were, and we never beat our chest. We built great things, made ungodly technological advances, explored the universe, cured diseases, and we cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy. We reached for the stars and acted like men. We aspired to intelligence. We didn't belittle it. It didn't make us feel inferior. We didn't identify ourselves by who we voted for in the last election, and we didn't scare so easy. And he kind of pauses and he says, "Huh. We were able to do all the things and do all these things because we were informed by great men, men who were revered. The first step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. America is not the greatest country in the world anymore. Enough." And he says the enough to the reporter because the reporter was hammering about getting a real answer. One of the best scenes in television, hands down. And the thing is, you look at sci-fi where, all these things that we could do, all these potential things that we have the possibility to do, sci-fi brings it up. And then you listen to that and you think about going into fantasy, what we used to be, what we compared to what we could do. And I think fantasy and sci-fi, all of that, to say, I agree with you with regards to fantasy and sci-fi showing humanity at its worst and its best.
Yeah, they certainly both have the potential to each do just that. There's that's kind of uh why I don't describe myself as a sci-fi author. That just happens to be what I wrote first.
Sure.
Um, it's that there's a lot in my personal history. I've read just as much fantasy as sci-fi. I think I don't know. I
Sure.
guess I could I guess I could list it out, but maybe
Right,
I don't know.
right.
Uh, I've certainly been influenced enough by it, for sure. That there's just that there's a lot of potential in there, and so to really talk about, why do a fantasy book this time, it's because I don't think I'm limited to just one type of thing, in my experience and
Sure.
in my understanding of the world.
Sure.
So yeah, I'll keep doing both.
Yeah. Um, so I most writers I feel like fall into like a category of the type of books that they write. So you don't want to do that, right? You want to write just across the board whatever you want to write.
Yeah, basically. If it's about the character and about their story. If they're a wizard in a castle, then that's the story I tell. If they're a pilot in a spaceship, that's the story I tell.
Mm,
Um, it's it that you pluck the character out of their setting and they lose their context. So for me, it's about the character. The character always comes first. I get this image in my head of whose story I'm telling, and then the world around them revolves. And sometimes it's got technology and spaceships and it's out in the stars, and sometimes it's on horseback and reading books in a library and by candlelight.
sure.
So it's and who knows the next one. Uh, well, I know what the next one's going to be anyway, but the next one after that, could be just in the modern day, somebody trying to, go to work on time. I don't know. So,
What's the next one?
yeah,
I'm curious.
I don't really. Okay, so the next one, September. Uh, it's already written. Um,
Give me
it's
the scoop.
okay. So, this is a lot earlier. So this is an exclusive. This is uh
Hey.
so so what I will tell you is that my September book is going to be on Earth.
Okay.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that we won't have aliens and super technology and all kinds of geekdom and fandom type nerding out happening at the same time. So that's about all I can say about that one at the moment because
That's
that's
enough.
that yeah hey, I gotta have an order of operations.
Sure.
I gotta give Kedrick his time first. We have to learn how to
Absolutely.
assassinate a wizard.
No,
uh
absolutely.
but yeah, it actually, I know it's not a, I know people like me who write books. They get to the end of one book and they're like, okay, I kind of know what I want to do next uh with this story, but I have to do something else first. And so uh at least it's the way I do it. Some people may write the whole series all in one go. I don't know. It just feels very, very good to have a next book written. Um which means I need to go ahead and literally after we're done here, I need to go ahead and start writing another one because I'm gonna run out of written books soon. Uh
So how many books have you written or are currently working on now?
I have three completed, including the one, including Awaking Nova, now How to Assassinate a Wizard. And then the third book, which I just revealed, is coming in September. Uh Three separate storylines, all of them series, so I've done something ridiculous, did three series at once. Uh I
You don't like to just
I
like
have
go easy, do you?
no, if it's easy, I've done something wrong. That's what it is.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, I am about to start book two for one of the series.
Is it the
But
Waking Nova
currently I
series?
have
Because I really want to know what happens.
it might be. I thought about doing it in order, but that would be too predictable.
Sure.
Uh, but uh,
Why
but no.
not?
So I have the other part of my I call it the other part of my writing career, which I kind of only do partially now, because I used to do a lot more writing for role playing game companies and things
Okay.
like that, but now I only work for one company, Iron Crown Enterprises.
Okay.
I've actually got a manuscript length book that I'm working on for them that has to be edited sometime this year.
Sure.
Uh, that's my scowl and grimace word, editing. Ugh,
Yeah.
I don't
I'm in the
I
middle
don't
of doing that with my first book right now, and it is something else.
well I I have this thing why do I need to edit and revise? I wrote it right the first time.
Right.
Um, I
Right.
don't I don't know about it. I don't know about everybody else, but I wrote it right the first time. Most of the time people disagree with me on that, and I always lose
Sure.
that argument.
Sure.
Uh, but but yeah, so um part of the writing process, of course, has to be revision and editing, which unfortunately slows down the writing of new things. So
Um, so when you go to like start a book, what is your writing process for starting that?
very unconventional is what I've learned. Uh, I I I keep trying to find someone else that has my process, and so far I have not.
So
Um,
what is your process?
well, so to 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 try broadly paint it. I do not plot. I do not outline.
You're a pants.
But well, here's the thing. At this, by the same token, I'm not a pantser.
Oh, okay.
Um, I have okay, just a little bit of spectrum talk here. I keep it all in my head. Um, I, if I put something down on paper, it immediately becomes disordered. I know this sounds strange to most people.
Sure.
Uh, because I'll forget to write this down or I'll forget to write that down. Uh, the plot and story of a book feels more organized in here than it does on paper.
I can actually
And
do that.
so, and well, and it allows me to do two things. First of all, it allows me to have a bigger story in mind than the one I'm currently writing.
Okay.
And second, it allows me to have flexibility in, that wouldn't have been right if I put that in there before. I can just change this and do that. And so it's what works for me. And I understand that a lot of people, and I've been told this, well, yes, but if you don't write it down, you're going to forget it. And okay, maybe that's true. But I have this belief personally that my first idea isn't always my best one.
I agree with that.
My my first idea will lead to another idea, and that process of evolution is too fast for paper.
Sure.
Um, if that makes any sense.
No,
So
it does. No, no, no,
to
absolutely.
to define my process, I don't know that I can do it very well. I just know that I don't do it like a lot of other people. Because I don't like how slow the other processes are. Uh, I like to evolve a bit more quickly, if
Sure.
that answers your question.
No, 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 it does. I get it. Um, what's your wife think about your stories?
Oh, uh, when I'm writing, I am a source of great frustration for her, because
Okay.
she gets the stories a few chapters at a time, and she finds that to be incredibly inconvenient. Uh, and it probably is for her. But I need that feedback immediately. So I'm like, okay, what did you think of these chapters? And her first response is always, why didn't you write more?
I love it.
Oh yeah, and so I can't write fast enough for her, but at the same time, she's incredibly supportive of all of my stories. She loves my characters. She gives great feedback. She obviously is my first
Sure.
pre-alpha reader. She's the one that I wake up and I'm like, okay, look, this character. I actually do my process on her.
Okay.
When I do it out loud, I'm like, okay, so this character, he does this and then he does this. Oh, but wait, what if he does this? And by the time I'm done talking, she goes, can you just write that down in a chapter so I can follow what you just did?
I, I love that. Can you just write it down?
Yeah.
Well, see, and it's so funny
Eh,
that you say the whole writing it down thing because if I don't write it down, it will disappear because my brain is constantly like squirrel. And so I have
right.
post-it notes. I ought to just buy stock in post-it notes, the amount of post-it notes that I use for things. And that's actually how I used to write papers in college is that my roommate Janie, and if she's listening, she'll laugh. Um, she would come home and you would see a wall of different color post-it notes over my desk
Uh-huh.
and with my notebook. And it would just be, I'd be moving them around because some would have sentences, some would have ideas. And once I got them where I wanted them, then I would sit and I'd start typing things out and pull one post-it note down at a time and type it out in the order that I had them in. And so it's such a, I think writers have such a weird process for doing things. Just, the amount of post-it notes
Oh,
I have gone through is astronomically a waste of paper, but it's the only thing that works.
oh yeah, and that's the thing is each of us has to figure it out what is. I used to be incredibly jealous of writers who had these piles and piles of journals and notebooks that they had filled out with all their ideas, and they had, and I set it out to do that. I was like, okay, sure, that's a discipline. I can do that, sure. And the second I get to the second page of whatever journal I'm trying to fill out, no, this isn't working for me. But
I
that's why I
switched
love
from
hearing
post-it
about.
notes to journals.
Right. Well, that's why I love hearing about other processes. Is it lets me know, number one, even though I'm weird, I'm not that weird. Meaning we all have our own degree of, what I do isn't going to work for you. What you do isn't going to work for me. Um, and that touches on one of my, sure, I'm sure that marketing, uh, for you, social media wise, is similar to me in the sense of the stuff that the algorithm gives you.
Hmm.
I,
Hmm.
I get I get dozens of, hey, this is a course you should take to write your novel more effectively, blah
All
blah
the
blah blah.
time.
And and I always laugh at those because I'm like, I'm glad that those help people who need the help for it. And I'm not saying that I'm beyond learning anything useful from anything like that.
Sure.
The what makes me laugh about it is the ones that promise that their method is the one.
Yeah.
And just, just, no, your foot is this size, this shoe will fit you.
Yeah.
No, it won't.
Well, and I mean, that goes
uh
back into education as well. When you talk about everybody finding their path, it took until I was in college for someone to figure out that if you just did math homework on graph paper as opposed to regular notebook paper, totally. And the first time I did math problems on graph paper, it was like a light bulb had gone off because I could keep the numbers straight and I could see what I was doing. And I'm like, why the hell did no one? I've spent like 12 years feeling stupid when all it took was having lines going both ways as opposed to one way. So, this concept that people learn differently, they write differently, they do even like knitting, like your wife,
oh
she
yeah.
wears airline bags. There are 10,000 ways to cast on, there are 10,000 different ways to knit. There are literally 1,000 different ways to do 1,000 different things. So that's really interesting. You talk about the different ways that people write because everybody has a different process. Every single writer
Yeah.
that I've talked to, their process. I have never heard one the same.
And that's why you'll never read two books that are the same.
Exactly.
uh,
I saw a quote the other day that was something like, "You give one book to 10 people, you will have 10 stories. You give 10 books to 10 people, you really only have one story for each person, as opposed, you know what I mean?" And I know I'm not
yeah,
getting that
yeah,
quote exactly right, but the idea that you can have that one story, like we do book club, right? And we had people talking about your book. Some of the stuff that some people picked up, it was just like, I didn't read that. What part was that in? And then or the way people interpret stories. Oh, I thought that character was awful. Oh, I love that character. Kind of like when we were at AuthorCon and it was now determined that I'm a raging sociopath because I root for the villain at every opportunity, and everybody else is like, well, no, I'm rooting for the good guy. No, screw the good guy. Let's let the villain just massacre everybody and move on. So, I really
well,
go ahead.
oh no, yeah, it's also a completely different experience when you hear people give their opinion on something you wrote, and you have to say to yourself, I didn't write that. That
Yep.
that wasn't what I said there, but that's what you took from that. So
Yeah.
that's also fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It always used to crack me up in classes in college where the professor would have you read something, right? Like a poem or whatever, and you would feel one way about it, and she would have the audacity, or he, whatever. Well, that's not what the writer meant. The writer meant blah, 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 blah. The writer died 100 years ago. How the hell do you know what he meant? This is what I get from this story.
Right.
And so I literally had one English professor that I just had to regurgitate what they said, and I got straight A's, even though I didn't agree with anything that she said. But when you tried to argue with her, she was like, well, that's not what the writer meant. The writer is not alive. You have not spoken to the writer. You do not know what that means, you know. And then I had other teachers that were like, well, why do you think that? Well, why would you make that decision? I hadn't thought about that way. That like we were talking about the Velveteen
Right.
Rabbit in one of my English lit classes, and everybody finds that story so sad. And I said, "Why do y'all find that story sad?" And she was like, "Well, because he loses the boy loses the bunny at the end." And I said, "Or maybe the boy's love of the bunny was so friggin' impactful and amazing that it brought to life an animal that wasn't an animal. And his love was so profound that it altered this stuffed animal's life." And you could see everybody sitting in the room going, with that look of, never thought of it that way before.
Right. Right. Well, that's one reason why literature should be discussed.
Mm,
Is that exactly what we're talking about. I'm going to see a theme that you don't see. You're going to see a character that I overlooked, and uh it's a more fulfilling experience. It's interesting how nowadays anyway, uh people do this, in my opinion, very naturally with movies.
mm,
People are so ready to give their opinion on a movie.
right.
Uh but then I find they're a little more tight-lipped when you ask about a book. And I don't really know why that is. I suspect it's because when you ask about a book, people innately want to sound smart,
Yeah,
and so it gives them pause. And what
sure.
they don't realize is what they don't realize is the smartest answer they can give is the first thing that comes to their mind. Uh and if you think about it, that's what we do about movies.
Yeah,
No, and I stand by that, because for most people the smartest answer is the most honest answer.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but anyway, that gets into other topics that we can't. But no, it's just interesting to me. Your point about the Velveteen Rabbit, just with giving people something new to think about. Why don't we share things like that more often?
Mm.
Because and I don't know. I think it's just because it means that people get to know what we really think, and that's scary. But
Oh yeah, because
hey,
a lot of
books are
people
scary.
like I have been called very sarcastic and tend to be very opinionated. And all I think about is y'all are just hearing what's coming out of my mouth. If y'all were up in my head, y'all would despise me because I the stuff that doesn't get said compared to the stuff that does get said is so profoundly different. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, the horror on their face should be from the fact that there is a filter.
Yeah, right. I mean, exactly. Because half the time stuff just comes flying out of my mouth, and even I will sometimes be like, yeah, okay, that might have been a bit harsh. But I'm also, when it comes to books and movies, I did not know this about myself till I got older, but I'm a purist. If you're
Okay.
going to do a book, do the fucking book. Don't like, hey, I'm going to take this really great story that everybody loves, and I'm going to change some of the minute details that are going to fuck up the whole plot and make everybody hate this movie. Like there's probably two or three movies that I just flat got out and walked out of and was like, nope.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful Creatures is one of them. And no shade to Claire Danes and Leonardo DiCaprio or any of those cast of characters, but when they did Romeo and Juliet, but with Baz, I have now discovered I don't like Baz Luhrmann movies.
Okay.
because I've seen three movies by him now, and every single one I've had that expression of that like that little old lady that's sitting there with this displeasure of look on her face of the and I don't know what it is, but I if you're going to do a book, do the book. Like Along Came a Spider by James Patterson. I
Oh
kept
yeah.
having to go ask my mom, is this a good movie? Because I can't tell because this is not following the plot of the book. Like I'm very I don't understand what I'm looking at. Like this is not how is this a good movie? And it's so funny.
Oh yeah, it's tough to dissociate the two.
It really, really is.
Back, you know, t 20 plus years ago at this point with Lord of the Rings, I was I had to take a step back and say, okay, wait, do I dislike this movie or do I dislike that it's not 100% the book? And I've had to keep doing that. For one of the most recent of this movie is even a few years old now. But Ready Player One.
Oh,
Um,
yep.
so when you step back and you think about it, you're like, okay, with the three keys that Parzival has to collect in the book, all three challenges changed for the movie. They're
Oh,
all completely
absolutely.
different. And and that's when you realize, well, wait a minute, you can't do the three challenges that were in the book in the movie. It
There's
can't be
no
done.
way. Nobody wants to sit
It's
and watch somebody play video game for 4 hours.
no, we would sit there just watching him do what the character did for the last like 2 minutes of the movie. That would have been the whole movie.
Hmm.
And so but and you can say things about the movie, oh well, Spielberg guy, because it had some of his classic tropes in it and everything like
Oh
that.
yeah,
But
for sure.
um uh was it a good movie? See, here's the thing. I don't like making that distinction. I'm like, okay, you know what? I enjoyed watching it. That's all I care about. Uh I enjoyed watching it. I loved reading the book, obviously.
Oh yeah, I
So yeah,
love that one. I got to read book two
it's
really bad.
it it's a tricky thing, crossing the media over, which now happens on a regular basis. And so talking about books becomes more difficult because you have a media in books that we can know the character's thoughts, we can understand their motivations by narrative,
Right.
whereas in a movie, unless you have a voiceover by Morgan Freeman,
Yeah.
um no one's going to understand what a character's thinking.
Right. Exactly.
uh and so I've learned, and this is me personally, I've learned to cut movies a little bit of slack, maybe give
I'm
them a
getting
little bit of
there.
grace, because they're not, and I know I would get roasted for this by a segment of my friends, but they know that I say outrageous stuff like this all the time anyway. Uh, Movies aren't playing the game with a full deck. Uh,
Okay.
books books by the same token are not playing with the same, uh how do I say this? Because it's each one has cards the other one doesn't.
Sure.
Uh, Movies, visually speaking, can obviously uh give picture to a book and give motion to a book.
Sure.
Which brings up another topic of, apparently not everybody sees a movie in their head when they're reading a book. I don't understand that. But
I don't either because is it just like quiet up there? I would go insane.
right, I know.
I have a
But
non-stop dialogue ticker taping through my brain at all times. If it was quiet up there, I would think I was dead.
right, and I think, and this is armchair psychology here.
Sure.
Uh, uh, I think that movies speak better to the people who don't have that internal movie in their head when they, it helps
I
them
can see
visualize. It
that.
helps them, and so by that standpoint, I can see movies being preferable to books. But by those, and so it's all it is sitting down and talking and realizing we all just want stories that impact our lives.
Yep.
And I know that took a real serious turn there. Oh, stories that
No, no, no,
impact our
but it
lives. Okay,
does.
fine.
It absolutely does.
And some of us engage better with words on a page because our brains can turn that into something more. And some of us engage better with movies.
Sure.
So that's the thing. So I don't my, you know I'm not disparaging of movies at all. It's just that I don't always need them to understand the story.
Yeah.
Uh, but at the same time, movies are cool. I love
Oh
watching
God.
movies.
I
They're
love it.
awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a chance for me to turn off my brain.
And that's what
And
reading does
and
for me too, is it's a chance for me to
right.
turn off my brain because my brain is constantly like, dude, you got to do this, you got to do this, and don't forget this, and don't forget that, you know. And so for me to be able to read, my brain just goes funk and it just is quiet.
Yeah. And so yeah, movies are great, books are great. Let's just all read books and watch movies. I mean, come on,
I
let's
agree.
let's
Well, that is a good point to end up on because we are out of time. David, thank you so, so much for joining me again. You're
of
you
course.
and Lloyd are the only return guests I've had so far, and I've loved having you both on here.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much. Glad to do this. Our
Absolutely.
conversations are great. So yeah.
Oh, every time. I'm really excited about your new book. I can't wait. I really want to see. I'm really want to see the wizard thing. I'm really. We're gonna have a little
Oh,
party in the shop.
oh, that sounds great. Yeah, the cover reveal is coming soon. And then I'll bring you a copy of the book as soon as I have one.
Oh,
So,
I'm so excited. All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Spine Bookcast Chronicles of a Bookshop. Don't forget to like, share, follow, subscribe, all the things, and tune in next week for another great episode. I hope you have a great day. Thanks, guys.